Okay, so I'm going to attempt to address some basic fundamentals of swinging a mace in a 360 movement. I'm by no means an expert, but these are things that I have picked up from a handful of different sources. And if you want to see the original places I found them to get maybe a better version of the original material, then I will try to dig those up upon request. But probably the 3 or 4 main things. So this obviously is just a dowel that I need to be able to do this in slow motion. So it's a little shorter than my actual mace. First of all, warm up. Obviously, I like to do a lot of like these, heft the mace up and over from the ground, back down, and then like throw it up and then catch the weight over and down. And then obviously a lot of front pendulums, trying to get it up parallel with the ground and get the elbows high and the shoulders warm. And then I bring it around and back and do the same thing from the back. Kind of gets my hips loose and into the thing. And then I can move into actually trying to do some work. So, number 1, keep the doubled up hands packed close to the belly button at the beginning and end of each movement. That really helps me drive through on the pull. So at the end of a swing, when you go to pull in, if you don't really think about tightly drawing it down to the navel, you tend to get a thing where it kind of comes to here and then you roll into the next one without really getting that full pull with the lats. That's one of the best things about the exercise. And also, then you don't have to kind of cast it up as much when you come back to do the next one. So down to the navel, beginning and end of every movement. The next one is about the elbows and kind of thinking about the movement in like sword fighting terms, for lack of a better description. When I go to cast, which is a term I want to say I heard, I definitely don't think I made it up. For a Mace 360, I always want to be drawing back over the shoulder that my lower hand is on. So I would cast over the opposite shoulder, obviously. And that is because when I get into doing one-handed 360s, I definitely want to be pulling back over like this, because trying to do it the other way, one-handed, can be done, but infinitely more awkward. So that feels good. It gets me greased in the groove for one-handed 360s, which are a nice thing to be able to move into without having to buy a bigger mace. But at any rate, yeah. So my right hand is on the bottom, so I'm going to cast to my left. I'm going to pretend that I'm a medieval swordsman and block. That's the way I think of that initial movement. I'm actually pushing up with both hands, and then I'm bringing that elbow in almost perpendicular to the ground. And then when it falls behind, it comes around like this, then I'm leading back the other way with the other elbow into almost the same thing, and then pulling that elbow in to get back to here. So if you watch just my hands while I do another slow motion repetition, you'll see that the hands go almost in a straight line up over my head and then back. Again, hands go almost directly back over my head and then back down again. I can't guarantee that's the best way to do that, but it feels the best for me. And when I started doing these, and I was doing what some different people on the internet have called muscle fucking it, by inadequately using the momentum to my advantage, one of the big things that I was doing was getting a lot of slop through my shoulders, a lot of lean in my torso and shit like that. And I find that just keeping that idea of blocking and then letting it fall and swing, and obviously trying to let my elbows go up towards the sky and all that good stuff. That helps shoulder mobility. But anyway, block, let it drift, and then when it gets to about 7 o'clock, pulling through and across with that other elbow again. Thinking about wanting that to be the ideal version of the movement helps me do multiple reps over time while concentrating just on that. And it helps the time pass, and it helps me keep my form steady over 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes of doing basically till I run out of steam and I have to transition into an easier movement. Now, the last thing, and something that I'm still very much working on, is related to breathing and core. So I found that when I tried to start doing a lot of swings, I would get to a point where I was doing 2, 3, 4 minute sets, and I was starting to get into a point where I was doing a lot of this, and my body was kind of rocking and rolling all over the place. I would throw one up, and out of fatigue. And I feel a lot better about my swings, and I feel them a lot more in my core if I make sure to brace like I'm bracing for a squat. And it's hard to do when you do continuous reps of an exercise, but I find that the best way is to go ahead and cast, and right as it reaches the apex of the cast, that's when I get my breath. And I almost do a little bit of a hollow body, not that you can tell with my spare tire, but where I almost curl in on myself just a little bit, mostly to reinforce against this centripetal pull, you know, of the weight as it comes behind me, wants to pull me back like this. So I'm trying to fight that by bracing my core with my breath. So if I get my breath right here, strong exhale as I pull, just like in any weightlifting movement where you would breathe in on the easier part of the movement or the eccentric, whatever. Anyway, you breathe when it's easy, you exhale when it's hard. So that's me doing it with the dowel. This is my only Mace, currently my 16 pounder, and hopefully you can kind of see these things work that way. So now my left hand is on the bottom, so I'm going to cast to my right. I'm going to see if I can put the things that I've explained into motion here. Now, you can see here, this thing leaning over on me. That is something that I'm still working on, trying to find the sweet spot on. And that comes from riding the momentum as it comes behind me and pulling at just the right time. Obviously, I'm pulling in and down, but that thing still has some swing coming over my shoulder, and it wants to overswing on me. And I don't know if the intention is to take a full stop at the end of each rep, but I'd like to, because I feel like it helps all my stabilizers get engaged and gives me better control of swinging a 16-pound ballistic weight around my body on the end of a piece of pipe. Obviously, you could just ride that into almost like a touch and go, where you would kind of just pop down and back out again, pop and out, and pop and out. The problem that I find if I do this is that I start to get weird angles of the swing where like it almost wants to bounce off my legs because it's just not under control. When I go to cast again, it still has momentum. And I also feel like after about 10 or 12 of those, I start getting to a point where I'm getting pulled by it. So personally, I think it's better to try and bring it to a stop at the end of each movement, even if I have to kind of fight it. It's just that much more work for the forearms, the shoulders, some of the other muscles that aren't necessarily used so much in the actual swing itself. I think that's pretty much it as far as swinging mace in a 360 movement. The next thing that you would do after you tire yourself out from 360s would be to step down to a 10 and 2, which for me, when I'm fresh, is actually harder to execute. But I had a lot of people tell me, no, after you do 10 or 15 minutes of swings and you can't do another one, you'll be able to still do 10 and 2s for a while. And they were right. Like, I have done probably 25 minutes of swinging before I made this video tonight. And they're definitely, I'm gassed on them, but I could probably still do more. But this is definitely a good move to burn yourself out. So instead of coming all the way around, basically you're starting about here and you're only coming back to about there. And when your mace is lighter, you don't really ever see the need for that, because see, even here, like, I'm not quite fatigued enough that when I pull in, it doesn't almost want to come completely to plumb. But when you're really wiped with a 10 or 12 or heavier mace, it becomes much harder to get that sucker all the way around and continue to go in a full circle fashion. So I guess that's just a preview of maybe the next thing. And maybe I'll break out that monster 25 pounder if it's really long and inconvenient to do, to show you 10 and 2s on, because I really can almost only do 10 and 2s with that thing. But that's it. I hope it was helpful. Let me know if it was or if it wasn't. If you want details about where I saw some of these techniques, or maybe some people that have opposing philosophies on it, I will attempt to dig those up and answer those questions.